Kia ora and welcome to Cinema in Context, where we discuss all things film and the connections between. My name is Jeremy Downing.
I'm Sarah Watt.
And I'm William Chen.
And each month at Cinema in Context, we discuss two films, one current and one retrospective with some connection. It could be the same director, the same actor, or a similar theme. This month, we are discussing Tetris, which came out on Netflix, was it?
Apple TV Plus.
Apple TV Plus this year, and Argo, which came out in cinemas. Remember those?
Oh, yes.
In 2012. The connection being they are both sort of cross-continent political thrillers with a pop cultural focus at the centre.
Based on real events.
Yeah, oh nice, I love that. Please be warned, both films will be spoiled, so if you haven't seen either of them, then please pause this episode and come back at a future date. All right, Sarah, give us a bit of an introduction to Argo.
Argo, 2012. One of the spoilers is it actually won the Oscar for Best Picture. And it's directed by Ben Affleck, who some of you will know as an actor and others might know only as Mr. Jennifer Lopez. However,
The
Argo,
Ben part of Benefit.
That's right. Argo is, Argo was one of those brilliant, we couldn't tell you this at the time, true stories, which was released from one of the no doubt hundreds of secret CIA files hidden away in a dusty basement in Langley, Virginia. So it tells the story of a plot in 1980. Those of us who were around at the time or old enough to remember or have studied history will know that the United States Embassy in Tehran in Iran was hijacked by Iranian protesters and hostages were holed up for many months. Now 6 Americans escaped, but they had to go into hiding elsewhere in the city of Tehran. So the CIA... and the CIA agent in charge here is played by Ben Affleck. They devise a way to bust these Americans out of Iran by creating an unlikely false cover story. They engaged real film producers, made up a sci-fi movie called Argo, and then told the Iranian authorities that they needed access to scout for locations with their crew and then get their crew out of Tehran. But how did it go? We'll see.
Nice. And William, give us an introduction to 2023's Tetris.
So, Tetris, the movie, is an adaptation of sorts of the real, true story behind the Tetris video game. A game many would claim to be the greatest game of all time. About its origins in the Soviet Union, as well as how the rights to Tetris were brought out across the Iron Curtain to the West at large, and specifically to a little-known company called Nintendo. Tetris, the main characters being Alexei Pajitnov, the creator of Tetris, Russian, and Henk Rogers, a Dutch-Indonesian businessman who was one of the driving forces in getting Tetris, again, out of the USSR. Their unlikely friendship and the political strife that surrounds the whole project is what drives this film. And it is all about kind of this end of the decade, this fall of the Soviet Union, these big political upheavals backgrounded against something about video games.
Nice. I mean, straight off the bat, I'm thinking in Argo, you've got the Canada, USA, and Iran kind of piece.
Yep.
And then in this film, in Tetris, you've got the British, Japan, USA, USSR kind of tension as well. They're really well paired. And I just want to shout out to you, William, because you suggested these movies. And I guess when you hear about Tetris, and I don't even know if I'd seen the trailer. I was like, okay.
I didn't even know it existed.
Yeah, I remember hearing about a movie being made of Tetris, and I was like, oh, what's next? Monopoly, the movie?
Yeah.
Do you guys remember Battleship?
Yeah.
I called it Battle Shit. And it won the place of worst film of the year for me.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's a movie where Liam Neeson says, "You're not going to sing this Battleship."
Oh gosh, he had a special set of skills that he could employ.
Yeah.
It was like B4 to B8 or whatever it was. But yeah, no, really, really well paired films. And I guess that's the strength of both of these movies, is that they show really complicated political tensions in quite simple ways. I think simplified in some ways, particularly in Argo's case. Like, I guess we could talk about the depiction of the Iranians, but
and in Tetris's case as well, like the depiction of the KGB.
Yeah, true.
The depiction of everybody in Tetris. I mean, Are we ready?
Yeah, let's jump in. Let's
Are
go.
we ready
We're
for
ready.
this? I would agree that Tetris is one of the greatest games of all time, and that's coming from me as not really a gamer. And actually, if I may say, this film made me go, oh, I can't wait to get back into an I would only play it in an arcade. I don't have any old Game Boys sitting around or anything like that, but I was like, oh yeah, that was cool, man. I'd go back and play that. But I felt as though the film was well, how did I put it here? Great game, really unsophisticated film, I think is what I wrote on my notes, because the film itself just seems like everyone's playing a caricature. And even Roger Allam, who plays Robert Maxwell, the evil, and he was an evil, tycoon, and his horrible son. Everybody just seems to be a little bit kind of larger than life, kind of caricature of whatever. So yeah,
I think 100%. Tetris is the thing about Tetris the movie is that it takes a fascinating true story and turns it into a cartoon.
Yeah.
Right? And it's strange because there's a book about it. It's called The Tetris Effect by Dan Ackerman. I would highly recommend it. It basically covers the events of the film, but, a lot of it is about, like, the creation of Tetris, how Pajitnov actually came up with the idea, him and his fellow programmers at ELOG, the Soviet, computer science organization, like, porting it to PC and balancing that, and then the other side, the business side of things with Hank Rogers and his dealings with the Japanese, the British, and the Soviets, and kind of having it coalesce. And it's a fascinating tale, and again, the book is highly recommended. This is definitely not the book. I was reading the book, and I guess I don't remember there being car chases.
Oh, that's the part that was the jump the shark moment for me. I was enjoying the film. I mean, I agree with what you're both saying, but I was enjoying it. I thought, oh, this is a good retelling or telling of this story that I don't know. It was the car chase at the end that I was like, all right, we're there now. Okay, it wasn't earned, and it did seem like it, even with everything so far, I do still think it was a bit of a jump and a bit of a shift in the tone of the film.
Yeah.
When you're talking about the book, it makes me want to read it. It reminds me of the Creativity Inc. Pixar story, and how that's just a fascinating read, and I'd love to go and read the details of this game, because I love Tetris. I've got back into Tetris with Tetris 99. Tetris
So
99,
good.
which is an online version. There's 99 players, and you're trying to eliminate the other players. It's
Last person surviving. It's super fun.
it's interesting to think. You're saying you played it on a I want to say console, but it's not what I mean.
An arcade game.
And to think that
Does that age me, or do they still have them?
No, they still
I mean, probably both can be true.
I don't think Tetris is. Some of them might have Tetris.
A lot of people play Tetris on their phones nowadays. I think it's a really big deal.
But to think that
I've got a phone.
if I was playing it on a computer, William was playing it on a Game Boy, and you're playing it in the arcade,
That's right.
our money would be going to different places.
That's
quite an
right.
interesting.
And also,
idea.
it shows somewhat how timeless it is, right? Because I drifted into Wikipedia. Have you heard of Wikipedia? It's great. Oh, it's amazing. You click on a link, and then you click on another link, and you click. It's like a game.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure you already know this, but this was all news to me, that there are cognitive. There's been research done that show cognitive benefits to playing Tetris, and that they've done a whole bunch of research with young people playing it for 30 minutes a day, and it really increases everybody's problem solving and da-di-da-di-da.
Right.
And I'm interested in that as an educator, as no doubt you would be, because currently in my work, I'm looking for what we call interventions to engage young people's brains to grow in different ways that aren't just reading text and whatnot, yeah? So suddenly I'm reading Wikipedia and I'm like, oh, shoot, I should get them Tetris. They'll play it and it's for fun, but actually, secretly, sneakily, it's improving their problem-solving skills and their response times, or what's that called?
Yeah.
And all that, and how amazing that something's educational as well.
I mean, yeah, that's the literal Tetris effect. Right? They kind of briefly shown in the movie at the beginning where he sees the falling blocks around him. But yeah, the fascinating thing, as you say, Sarah, is the cognitive psychology of this video game has been like completely widespread, and it's so ubiquitous as well, and everyone knows what a Tetris is, the different shapes, and it's incredible.
Yes. Yeah. And do you know what it makes me realise? Back in the olden days, we didn't talk about dopamine, right? But now all we do is talk about dopamine, because all we're doing is getting dopamine hits.
Yeah.
No, but seriously.
Yeah, true.
And if you think about it, every time the blocks fall and it goes and you lose a line, that's a dopamine hit. So you can feel the addictive properties of that satisfaction of and look, I'm talking to two gamers. I feel like a bit of a dafty.
I mean, I was like, Sarah knows this game.
Yeah.
That's the win of this episode.
Well,
isn't
that's
there?
right. Which is why, listeners, readers, watchers, I wasn't on the frickin' Mario Brothers podcast. Jeez, I got a month
You
off
missed
from
out.
that. Oh my god!
It was a good time, Sarah.
If you'd
Good
done
time.
Donkey Kong, I would have been all
he
over
was
it.
in the film.
He's in
No, I
the film.
don't
He's a
care.
main
I'm
character.
not watching that stuff. But anyway, but you know what I mean, though. I can understand why Tetris is like ding, and you're like, yeah, and I'm going to keep going, and that's why that addictive thing. I appreciate that gaming is addictive and that is dopamine, but I'm just saying, we're talking old school,
Yeah.
right? We're talking blocks falling.
I love
not
lots.
shooting people to death and stuff.
I love lots of elements of this film beyond the filmmaking. I think learning that Tetris is both from tetra and tennis. And as the son of a marketing, graphic design, advertising person, you know, my dad always taught me that the best company names combine two words to make a new word. One of the words describes the product and one of the words describes the benefit.
Do you mean like mirror soft?
Not quite.
What are you going to do with that?
No. Like Kleenex is a good example. It cleans you in an express way and it makes a new word. Or Tetris is like from four and it's tennis. Or Band-Aid, you know, it's literally a band and it helps you. And the great thing about in this new age, which was not thought about back in the day with Tetris, is that those words are easily found on Google because nobody else is going to come up when you type in.
Tetris.
If you came up with Tetris for the first time.
Search engine optimization.
Exactly.
Without them even knowing that Google was going to be a thing.
Yeah, so it's, you know, really timeless, you're right.
Yeah, it is
but,
timeless.
But those sort of details, and I'm like, I never knew. Of course, I knew that the blocks are all made out of four, but I just never really put that together. And I think the simplicity, and they talk about it in the film, the simplicity of the game of Tetris and how addictive it is and all the things we're talking about is really the gold. I'm just surprised that they saw the gold in that game so quickly and so confidently. And the fact that, you know, you say little known company. Well, Nintendo wasn't little known. It was the biggest.
The big boys, yeah.
Like 93% of market share. No one would ever have that again. And yet they confidently backed this game that had... I'm surprised they even stayed with it, with the amount of complications.
I mean, reading a little behind it, like, it is a true story that Hank Rogers advised and then sort of, you know, finagled his way into Nintendo and said that I think that the Game Boy, this piece of technology that would change gaming forever, should be bundled with Tetris and not Super Mario Brothers, which is, I guess, a decision that would have, you know, just repercussions, historical repercussions down the line.
I never knew that until probably you told me recently, William. But because in my mind, I always think of Tetris as that rip-off brick game that you'd buy for $10 from the warehouse, you know, and to think that it, you know, Game Boy for some reason just skipped my upbringing. Maybe I didn't have older siblings, or I don't know, but I just didn't. Game Boy wasn't really around until Pokemon came out in the sort of mid '90s. But just amazing that this game started out in this way.
Yeah. I never had a Game Boy. What we had, because I was born in the 70s, grew up in the 80s, and what we had were little, and you'll know the correct words for what I'm demonstrating here, those little games that it was just the game. So Donkey Kong Jr.
Game and Watch.
Yeah.
So
I remember those.
Donkey
My nana had
Kong
one of those.
Jr., Parachute. If you wanted to play Parachute, you pick up your Parachute game, you play that little one.
Yeah, and they're all like cellophane kind of sheets or something they all were pre-printed with all of the movements on them, weren't they? So the little black that was all pre-printed into the game.
Yeah.
I love that William's nodding to me like, yes, you're correct.
And
Sarah's
I'm like,
oh wow.
I didn't realise, because that's all that technology was, you know. But it certainly wasn't you pop a card in and you play a different game. There was none of that business.
And to get to the bottom screen was really hard, wasn't it? Like you had the top screen and the bottom screen. Am I remembering the screen?
Yeah,
like Donkey Kong
I think
Jr.
Some
you're
some
talking
Game
about the
Watches
fold-up
were
orange
fold up,
one.
yeah.
Yeah, no, and so Donkey Kong, so there was Donkey Kong, which was the orange fold-out one.
Yeah.
Like a phone. And then Donkey Kong Jr. is a lovely green colour, shiny. Oh, just so beautiful. And he just runs and he leaps and he hangs on a thing and then whatever. I can't remember the rest. But it was really fun and addictive and all that kind of thing. And yeah, that's all I had.
Well, I mean, Sarah, you bring up Microsoft and Roger Allen. Man, that guy, I mean, he's a thespian, but he's just made a career of playing, like, scumbags, right?
Yeah.
I think of his role in V for Vendetta, his role in... He was the main baddie in Speed Racer. Do you guys remember that with the Wachowskis?
No.
Where he basically plays a fictionalized version of what he's doing here as Robert Maxwell. And he's like, I'm a capitalist and I have money to throw around.
Isn't his voice amazing? Like he really does. As you say, he's a thespian. He treads the boards, but his voice in this was really
Did
glorious.
Maxwell actually sound like that?
Probably.
I've never seen footage of him.
Probably. So, but the son was a ridiculously just rude caricature. Look, I didn't love this film. Let's just say it. Toby Jones, who is wonderful. I mean, I thought that the script was annoying because it just kept going, but now let's talk about those handheld rights. I think we should talk again about those handheld rights, blah, blah. But Toby Jones, who plays the little Russian dude, that's Toby Jones really not doing his best work because he doesn't. It's not his best script.
Robert Stein. I think he's.
Oh, you're right. German. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
That's
German,
right. Exactly right. But it's all
Yeah.
so. It's
Well,
like a character.
He's a cartoon.
Yeah,
Like, they're all cartoons. Even our leads, like Hank Rogers and Alexei Pajitnov,
Yeah.
who were exec producers on this film,
Yeah.
are portrayed as cartoons. And I think what's interesting about this movie was, again, I love the book, so seeing the trailer was like, what is this? Where there's a car chase in it, and there's action, and there's falling blocks, like the video game aesthetic overlaid on top, which
That's
was
right.
pretty cool.
Well,
I
and it's
enjoyed that.
the chapter breaks.
Yeah, yeah.
Level up.
Yeah,
Level-
and it will
level
go
fours.
Russia, and there's the three people, and it's a cute thing
It's super
to do.
cute. Yeah.
But I do think, compared with Argo, which maintains a seriousness throughout, because we're going to have to talk about Argo at some point. Do you know what I mean?
But here's the thing with Argo, how it starts with the storyboards and the comic book art.
Yeah.
My memory was playing tricks on me. It was like, are they going to do that? Is storyboarding going to be like a visual motif? But it wasn't.
No.
And I kind of wish it was. I don't know. It was like, oh, this is a really cool way to talk about like the historical context of the movie.
But maybe they thought it would have lightened it. Because I remember Argo feeling kind of serious. And I mean, I know that a lot of people don't like it, or they don't like Ben Affleck, or they don't. I thought it was very well done. I thought it was a bit of a scandal that he wasn't nominated for at the Directing Academy Award, blah, blah, blah. So it was a serious movie, and despite the fact that Scoot McNairy's wearing massive glasses, actually cast to look exactly like his real life character, and everyone's got the 1970s or 80s, 70s. I just said it. What was it?
80.
1980s, early 80s
79,
garb
80,
on them. It felt very of its period. It didn't feel like, I'm Taron Egerton and I'm putting a moustache on.
Well, and it's interesting that he was cast in this role as
Which
well.
one, who?
Taron Egerton.
Yeah.
Because, like you said, he's Indonesian Dutch, right?
Yeah.
And I just think...
Have you seen what the guy looks like?
Does he look Indonesian?
No, he's a very, very dark-skinned, European-looking surfer dude. He looks nothing like Taron Egerton.
Right.
Yeah.
But then on the flip side, have you seen what Tony Mendez looked like? Like Ben Affleck's character?
Yes,
He's
yes.
Mexican.
yes, maybe,
right.
maybe that's who I'm
He
thinking
looks
of.
nothing like Ben Affleck. And
Yeah.
it's fascinating you bring up Scoot McNairy. Like, everyone in Argo is cast to look as close to their historical counterparts as possible, and they even have the side-by-side
That's
comparisons
right.
at the end.
Which is entirely unnecessary because
Apart-
who cares?
Well, apart from Ben
No,
Affleck.
do you know what I mean? That doesn't matter. I mean, nobody knows. It's not like it's Michael
like-
Jordan looking like Michael Jordan.
Well, no,
Do you know what
I think it's like, this is historical verisimilitude, you know,
Yes,
that
but
kind
do you
of
know
thing.
what I mean? They're not. They're not. I was gonna say they're not real people. God bless them. They are. They were real people. But do you know what I mean? They weren't famous people. It didn't matter.
Well, apart from Tony Mendez,
Right.
who Ben
doesn't
Affleck
look like.
is not Tony. Tony Mendez was relatively short, you know.
Yeah.
He's a Mexican dude.
Yeah.
He looks like someone who's not a Bostonian like
Yeah.
Ben Affleck type.
Sure,
you know?
sure.
And it was
Interesting.
fascinating that Ben Affleck was the only guy who didn't have the "this is who they are" and "this
Yeah.
is who the actors" photo at the end.
Maybe that's director's rights.
I think probably more studios would call for a big name to be in the film, right?
yeah.
And so if
Yes.
maybe Ben Affleck wanted to cast somebody else in that role, and they said, no, we're not making this movie unless you have a big star. He said, well, I'm a big star. What if I'm in it? You know, I could see that happening because he's not been the lead in a couple of his movies. And I think I do take my hat off to Ben Affleck for this film. I do agree and rewatch that it was the right choice for him not to get the Best Director
Sure.
nomination.
Okay.
I do think that there are some flourishes in this movie that date it to 2013 when it came 12. But I really enjoyed rewatching it. I really
Yeah.
enjoyed I love Claire Duvall for one thing.
Oh, yeah,
She's only got a
yeah.
small part in it, but she's just a joy to watch.
Her eyes, like her acting with her eyes, is amazing.
Have you seen
She's she's one of the hostages.
Yeah, she's the one with the more kind of Farrah Fawcett hair.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so have you seen Veep? She's great in Veep. She was in Carnival. She's in back in the 90s. She did lots of teen stuff. But
I enjoyed rewatching Alan Arkin.
Yeah, I forgot he was in, I forgot, you said before we started recording,
Oh my gosh.
John Goodman, Alan Arkin,
cast,
Bryan Cranston.
Well, when they walk into the...
Philip Baker Hall.
Oh, yeah. Well, when they walk into the CIA conference room, it's like, I guess these are all the character actors ever in one room.
Yeah.
I mean, there was Titus Welliver was like Bosch himself was giving the talk. Again, Cranston. I can never pronounce his name, but is it Zeljko Ivanek?
I don't know. I don't
he's
bother
the-
saying his name. I just go, that guy.
The Canadian guy from In Bruges. Right. Richard Kind is in this?
Yeah,
It's like, oh, whoa, it's Richard Kind.
Yeah.
And again, Alan Arkin, John Goodman, Scoot McNairy, like... The skies were dark for all the character actors were in this film.
Yeah,
That's right.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
probably just drawn from Ben Affleck's connections with them. He's probably done films with a lot of them.
And it was a 2012 thing. You know, Scoot McNairy made it really big in Monsters.
Yeah.
And then he was in, Who's My Mate? Not Dave. Oh, it might have been David Michaud, the Australian director of Animal Kingdom. We're not here to talk about Animal Kingdom.
I love
but
Animal
I wish
Kingdom.
that we were.
Oh, we could totally pair that
Oh
with a film.
my God, let's find something.
That was one of my favourite films of the year.
That
And
was
I haven't gone back and watched
it. Was, absolutely.
Yeah.
But anyway, so David Michaud then followed that up with The Road. What am I thinking of? No, I'm thinking of Killing Them Softly by Andrew Dominic, another Australian New Zealand director. So Scoot was around for a while.
Yeah.
Oh, I just have a quick Scoot story. Pretty sure it was Scoot. So, oh my God. So what's that film? This is a spoiler for the Liam Neeson film where he's on the plane, Unsomething. And
Michael Collins.
no! Where he's on the plane and he's the air marshal. and-
Right. And spoilers, Scoot McNairy is one of the
Well,
baddies.
and here's the thing. Do you know, this is the thing, right? Scoot McNairy wasn't really much of a face in those days, but I knew that he was. So when he came on and he was just in the background, I was like, why is Scoot McNairy in this plane? I was like, I wonder if he's the baddie. And then it turns out that he is.
Yeah.
Sorry about it, guys. But, you know, and it's like, that's one of those things when, you know, when you're like, hang on a second.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Well, it's also pretty funny how later on in Batman vs Superman: Dawn of Justice, Scoot McNairy plays Ben Affleck's like employee.
Oh, that's
so
cute.
he works for Wayne Tech, and they have heaps of scenes together.
See,
Like,
Wayne Tech. That tells you too. No jokes. Anyway, yeah.
yeah. But yeah, with as what you guys were saying, well, both points, right? Like Tetris is a cartoon and Argo is super entertaining. I found myself in both cases wanting to dislike the movies, but by the end of them, you just can't, right? I think Tetris.
I could.
It's not a great movie, but it's really entertaining movie, right? I think it moves along at a
Yes,
clip.
it does.
People are always like jibber jabbering, and like
Yeah.
the dialogue's pretty quick. Again, the stuff you say about the rights. Again, maybe this is just like the nerd in me talking, but I found that stuff so much more interesting than anything else, right? Because that is the core of the book as well, right?
Yeah.
It is people who are optioning rights to something that they don't have the money or the rights for, right? And it's a whole bunch of people throwing their weight behind invisible capital. And that's like the main tension of the story, not the KGB stuff, not anything else. Argo, I don't know about you guys, but did you guys find it really problematic? Incredibly problematic.
In this rewatch I did, and I think that's part of not just the director's flourishes, but some of those choices that I was like, oh, this is interesting. Can I say, first of all, I agree with you about Tetris, and I watched it on a Monday night after school. You know, my energy levels are low, and the ability to fall asleep whilst watching a film is high. And it kept me incredibly engaged, and I didn't mind the more schlocky B film kind of car chases and things.
Oh my gosh, that scene where the evil KGB operative gets Pajitnov's kids.
Yeah.
And he's like, whoa, this chair falls. Will a little child fall? Whoa.
Yeah, I know.
Like, oh my God.
Yeah, I've been learning a bit of Russian, so when he said Melchik, I was like, oh yes, boy, child.
Yeah, I do think that some of the problematic things in Argo, like I read that they added that sort of storyboarded prologue at the start where they explain why this rebellion is happening.
Yeah.
To kind of give clear motivation behind the protesting Iranians, and not to justify the violence, but to show that just some of the few films that we were kind of, at least there's some acknowledgement of America's meddling in these spaces.
Yeah.
I think the treatment.
But what you're saying, therefore, if they added that at the beginning, it's a good mitigation, right? Because instead of us coming in and going, look at these protesting Middle Easterners,
well, here's the
this
thing.
is terrible.
It's a Band-Aid, right?
It starts off like that, but then it has its cake and eats it.
Exactly.
Right.
I agree with
and
that.
I think it portrays Iranians very unflatteringly throughout the entire thing.
And two-dimensionally.
They're just the men are bearded, the women have headscarves, they're all angry, they're all shouting, they're very, very foreign, they're very, very other, and it's all about our American heroes trying to extricate themselves from this hell.
Save them from this evil, dangerous place.
And there's that comment at the end where Bryan Cranston and his sort of cronies are smoking cigars and, the CIA are going to be in the headlines. And like, nope, we need to let people think the Canadians did it. But the Jimmy Carter even said, beyond when the film came out, so he'd been beyond retired as the president. He said it was the Canadians that fully led that. It was that ambassador
Ken Taylor
on the ground. He was the one that came up with it.
He also had comments after the movie as well, Ken Taylor himself.
Right, what did he say?
That, again, there were artistic liberties.
Yeah.
But
can I just say, and I'm not being a defender, I'm simply positing this, Argo it's not a heist movie. It's not just an extraction movie. It is a movie about pretending that you're making a movie, and that's what's kind of fun, and that's in a way that whole Hollywood trope of let's give it the Oscar because it's a Hollywood movie.
They love movies about themselves.
And if you think about it, it's a neat conceit to go, I don't know, how are we going to get them out? We call that rhyme in terms of language features, Jeremy.
Or assonance, could be a bit of assonance.
It could be assonance as well. Neat conceit, because how cool to go, okay, we're going to have to, it was, the machinations in the background were really interesting for me in the way that you're interested or obsessed, some might say, with handheld rights there, William. For me to go, we need to have a real script. It needs to be one that's been optioned, but nobody wants it. We need to then do a table read and create a whole real story around its existence in order to sell it, get it in Variety and blah, blah, blah. I was like, this is fascinating. It isn't just somebody turning up at the border in Tehran and going, I'm a film director, I want to make a movie, because that story would fall apart. So how brilliant, and then, of course, you've got the artistic liberties with things like, John Goodman and Alan Arkin are walking around the set and they get stuck and they can't cross and the phone's ringing and the phone's ringing.
Again, what is fascinating about both Tetris and Argo, and I don't know if Tetris was influenced by Argo in any way, but they both end with, the most ridiculous chase.
Aeroplane.
It's like, a bunch of guys in a Jeep with AK-47s chasing after Swiss Air.
That was so exciting.
But that plane would have absolutely stopped.
Yeah.
Like, that plane would have stopped.
No, there's
That's
Switzerland.
So
I thought they were going to shoot the tires.
Yeah, that in Argo, though, was fascinating every time. I thought that was really poorly handled in Tetris. And they did the old kind of, Silence of the Lambs kind of, they went to the wrong door kind of thing.
Yeah, that's right.
But also, nobody boards a plane and gets seated and gets gone as quickly as it did in Tetris. And I know it's not a realistic film, but I was just like,
I love that.
lame.
So Ben Miles, who I've recently seen, he's awesome as a banker in Andor, but he plays Howard Lincoln, the then president of Nintendo of America.
And he is so good in Tetris. He's so good in it.
He's great.
He's a British actor. I've seen him on stage. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But I just love to think that, this guy's still kicking, he's still around, but in the 80s, he was involved in the car chase with the KGB.
Yeah.
Can we just talk about, so Argo won Best Picture, we keep mentioning it, and I've just gone back and looked to see what films were nominated. It wasn't, in some ways it was a great year for some of the movies that were represented, but in terms of any films that were sort of up against Argo, you can see why it won. Because you've got, there's some films in there like Amor, Beast of the Southern Wild, but they didn't have some of the some kind of attention as some of these other big films. You've got Zero Dark 30 and Silver Linings Playbook in there. Les Miserables. I mean, that's,
Gross.
yeah.
I liked it, but not to win Best
worst.
Picture. No, I liked it.
Oh my god, okay.
I feel hot and cold about it. I've got
Okay.
big criticisms and big praises of that film. Lincoln, which I found I actually turned off.
I thought it was so boring. I
did
gave
too.
it 2 stars.
I turned it off after half an hour.
Well,
was
I
like,
couldn't turn it
oh.
off.
You guys don't like monologues?
Oh, gosh.
Oh my god!
About
And I
American
like Daniel,
politics?
Daniel Day-Lewis was great, and he won Best Picture that year. But
Just him telling
Best
stories.
actor, you mean?
Oh yeah, sorry, he won
Yeah.
Best Actor.
And then you got Django Unchained, which I think is when Tarantino's. That's when Sally Menke, his
Yeah.
well-known
Editor.
she'd gone by that point. That was the first film he did without it, and I think that's when it starts to show. His films become more languid. I think if Inglourious was in here, I would have been like, give it to Inglourious. And then of course Life of Pi, which Ang Lee won the Best Director, but I still don't think that was Best Picture either. So Argo is the best option there, but it's still not the greatest option.
Well, in a way, isn't it? It's
film.
got that war in inverted commas. It's got that battle kind of excitement plus the Hollywood thing. Whereas Zero Dark 30 was purely a torture movie. I mean, it's not in the way that Saw is a torture movie. I don't mean that, but do you know what I mean? It's a military movie.
Yeah.
So
Can we just appreciate, and I know Sarah, you do appreciate, and you as well, Willie, but particularly Sarah, some of the wonderful jokes that Amy Poehler and Tina Fey came up with this season. So with Zero Dark 30, it's something like, from Catherine Bigelow, and I trust the woman who was, it was about torture. I trust the woman who was married to James Cameron for 3 years.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And then Argo was, Ben Affleck, he's from Boston, and he wanted to set his next film where people were more friendlier to foreigners.
Oh, I didn't know. I forgot that.
So
That's
some
so
great
funny.
digs and jokes. If you
Yeah.
go back, listeners, and watch the monologue, they do a much better job than me butchering those jokes.
Well,
But, yeah.
I think with how Argo presents itself, and maybe it's the 2012 context or the new, retrospective. I think given all of that stuff and given some of the unpleasant implications of that stuff as well, I'm not gonna lie, I still really enjoyed the movie at the end. Like, I think there's a driving force behind it that is really, really evident. I mean, Sarah, you bring up the fact that so much of it is that Hollywood story as well. And, I'm pretty sure this didn't happen in real life, but when Scoot McNairy at the end is with the Revolutionary Guard, and he's showing the storyboards.
And telling them the story.
The story, and it's like, he himself has been moved by the art.
Yeah.
And he's using art as a way of communicating across cultures, and it's super cheesy. But I've genuinely felt moved. It was
and
oh,
the story that he's telling
movies
them.
mean things.
He's speaking to them he's speaking in Farsi, and he's telling them, and then the Sultan's daughter this, and then she comes here, and she's come to save this, and and you go, oh my god, this is totally, this is a myth and legend type, cross-cultural story. He's saying it with enthusiasm. You get the cutaway, don't you, to Ben Affleck looking at him like, oh, he's doing a really great job. But also, I love films where there's somebody who saves the day, and if they can do it with a linguistic thing, I love that.
But also a great payoff for the fact that he's the key voice of dissent through this whole process. So gives him a lovely little arc.
Absolutely.
I tell you what though, I loved that moment. I'd forgotten about that moment. But also I watched this film this time without any subtitles. And so I was just enjoying it for what it was.
Yeah.
It did remind me of C-3PO telling the story of Star Wars to the Ewoks.
Right.
And in terms of problematic depiction of Iranians, I was like, oh gosh, it's like he's treating them like free.
Yeah. With that, so I started watching Tetris and didn't realise that there were subtitles, and I thought, they're doing that clever thing where you feel like the person who doesn't understand, and then I went, this Russian scene's gone on a long time. I think I'm probably, because also they weren't acting it out. Yeah. So then luckily I found the subtitles and went, okay, right, he's threatening.
Yeah.
Okay, fine.
Yeah. It's interesting. My students, they love watching stuff with subtitles. This is this new phenomenon.
Oh, no.
Wow.
And there's, so the new Gen Z, they all want subtitles.
Wait, you mean
on.
an English language film with English
They
subtitles?
always want subtitles.
It's a very good
always.
literacy exercise,
But
Jeremy.
there's some evidence I was reading about the other day that it's because the sound design is so set up for Atmos, and so when it gets compressed down, Christopher Nolan, you can't hear what people are saying.
Well,
Right.
do you also think it's because now with phones that autoplay videos, if you don't have the sound on, they always have the subtitles down below?
Yeah, true. I often watch things in the preview mode
Yeah.
on my phone. I don't even have the sound, and I just read the subtitles and watch it. It's quite interesting. But we were watching a video this week where I put the subtitles on, and it's the Google created ones.
Yeah.
And then the people speaking, they moved from between English and another language. I can't remember what language it was. And so it's just trying to phonetically English read this other language with their other subtitles underneath.
Amazing.
It's like, sorry team, we're not getting the English subtitles today. We'll just be okay with using our ears.
Yeah.
But yeah, interesting new phenomenon.
Yeah, that's good. I'm really glad of that, because you remember how traditionally I remember being in film festival films, okay, admittedly 10, 20 years ago, and the film starts and you'd have someone behind you go, is this subtitle? Because they didn't realise it. And you think, yes, it is, and you can jolly well get on with it.
Yeah.
Can I just say, because I thought, yeah, all right, you say Tetris and Argo, I'll do it. And then, of course, and you know me, I like to, this is the English teacher in me with the old connections report. I like to go through and watch the films and find all the things they have in common. So we've got ridiculous 70s haircut and clothes or 80s, haven't we established, really?
Well, it's interesting because they're on the films are located on either end of the 80s, right? 80 and 88.
Right.
Yeah.
So both of them are very good in terms of the production design, although I would say that Argo's production, hair, costuming and everything felt much more naturalistic and much less sort of, we're in costume.
Well, did you notice that Tetris, all of the establishing shots are animated? So I wonder if they were able to maybe keep a smaller budget for some of those flourishes.
Wait, do you mean Tetris was a smaller budget film? Because that occurred to me.
Although, I mean, there's one shot that always jumps out on Argo. I mean, watching it this time, every time Ben Affleck opens the curtains and you see Tehran with the mountains behind it, it's the fakest looking green screen.
The Carol Zero.
So I had read that before I watched Tetris, I'd read that it had been likened to The Social Network in terms of its being an origin story. Although I just think The Social Network is one of the greatest films ever made in every regard, and I can watch it ad nauseum. But actually, Tetris, ironically, reminded me of Air, which is the new Ben Affleck directed film about the origin of the Air Jordan shoe, where once again, like Tetris, you're dealing with a product that we all know really well. So you know where it's going to get to. You don't necessarily know whence it came. You also have a situation where in Air, neither of you have seen Air yet, have you?
Not yet.
No, but I've heard great things.
It's a good, really solid film.
Yeah.
Matt Damon. Oh, and interestingly, Ben Affleck is not the lead in it. He makes himself look exactly like Phil Knight, the CEO of Nike, and all vanity put to one side for that. And he does a really good impersonation of the fellow. But Matt Damon, who just looks old and paunchy and tired through the whole film, is superb. Anyway, interestingly, Matt Damon and Taron Egerton both play characters who believe in something that other people don't, and they have to convince, give me the money, give me the time, give me the opportunity, I will show you that this hunch will come to something. And then, of course, it does. It becomes well, in the case of Air, a multi-billion-dollar. I think they made $130 billion on the first... No, it wouldn't have been that much. They made $130 million from the very first launch of the Air Jordan shoe. That was like the first print run, if you will.
It was like beyond anything they could have ever possibly projected.
And interestingly, going with a rookie. So going with someone who was not yet an NBA star. So for me, what was interesting, because I know jack all about basketball in the NBA, it was really interesting learning about I keep saying machinations, but that's too harsh a term. But you know what I mean? The... learning about the organism that is the NBA and how that all works, you know. One thing I would say about Air, which actually I realise isn't relevant, but I've started, so I'll finish. I mean, it's relevant, but it's not relevant to our discussion here. But you are dealing with real people. And so Ben Affleck chose not to show Michael Jordan's character front on or really even side on. And when we hear him talk in meetings, it's very low key. We only see him from behind. And I feel like there was a longing to actually see who we might think of as real Michael Jordan. But you couldn't get real Michael Jordan looking that young now.
Heck yeah, you can. It's called de-aging tech.
Yeah,
and it looks super weird.
Yeah, that's true. But also, I believe that Affleck's decision was that he wanted him to... He's too big, too famous. to actually plonk in the middle of this origin story with actors playing all of the cast. But anyway, you go back to the really fascinating things in Air of the development of the shoe and the ordinary Joes who were tasked with coming up with that.
Because I'm just clicking now. Ben Affleck directed Air.
Yes, I'm sorry. Did I
Right.
not say that?
No,
from the
but I
beginning?
knew that. But no, I don't know if you did.
And so I thought for a minute, we should be doing Air and Argo.
Ah.
But actually, Air and Tetris go very well
Right.
together in that regard.
Yeah.
So actually, if you're going to do a
Well,
thing at the end
we
where you
are.
say third film, spoiler alert,
Yeah,
mine
it's a
is
bit of
Air.
Bit of a taster for those of you who have yet to join our Patreon. We will be discussing very shortly our third pairings.
Oh, sorry.
Third pairings doesn't work.
No, it doesn't.
Third grouping.
That's right.
Our third film. We were
Our triptyching.
yes.
Okay.
So Sarah's already given you a taster of hers.
There we go.
Can I say though, you're talking about that whole de-aging thing, and we were talking just before this about Yellowjackets, the television series, and being critical of some of the choices they're making whilst also still watching it. But I think that is an example of just having different actors.
Yeah.
We can suspend disbelief. It's so much more enjoyable as a human watching another human and not being distracted by, that looks good or that doesn't look good. No matter how good it looks, it pulls you out of the film, unless you're Avatar Way of Water. But it pulls you out of the movie.
Where everyone looks so realistic.
It does. I think so.
Yeah, but they're not real people.
I know, but I forgot. I just was
Okay.
watching it.
Do you guys remember Solo, a Star Wars story?
Yes.
Oh my
And
gosh.
how they recast Han Solo?
Yes.
Who's the actor?
I like that.
What's his face from West Side Story, right?
His name begins with A. It's like either Ansel Elgort
Is
or
it,
it's
it's not. Is it Ansel?
Abernathy Eberhard. He's the other one.
Is it Ansel Elgort or is it the
It's
other?
the one
guy?
you just said, Sarah.
It is Ansel Elgort.
No,
No.
Elden.
Eldenrick.
Ehrenreich. No,
That's it.
Ehrenreich. That's
And
it.
he's not the guy from West Side Story,
Oh,
but they have
okay.
they're basically the same person.
have the same
Elden
face.
Ehrenreich.
But
Ehrenreich.
anyway, again, Solo's not a great film, but I think he's fine as young Han,
Yeah, me
Han
too.
Solo.
Yeah.
He's totally believable as a younger Harrison Ford.
Yeah.
And I just think it's a pity that that film didn't do so well, and now Disney is just like, we need computer animation to take everyone back to exactly how you remember Mark Hamill back in the 80s, exactly how you remember Carrie Fisher and Peter Cushing.
Yeah.
And it's really off.
But isn't that also for nostalgia? I think it's because a lot of those people have died and we want to see them. Because do you remember when Carrie Fisher died just before whichever the heck
Last
that
Jedi.
Star Wars
Yeah.
was? And when we saw her on screen, we all felt a little bit choked up. And she was a construction of the real Carrie Fisher with a little bit of tutoring,
No, she'd
wasn't
filmed it all.
she?
Yeah. She'd filmed it all.
Right. So we felt that sense of, it's really nice to see her. So I think it's for us. I think blame us, blame our generation, by which I mean my generation, you know?
I didn't know. I do agree with you in terms of nostalgia,
Yeah.
absolutely. But in terms of blame, I think the buck stops with the people who are concerned with the bucks. Oh, there we go, that happened. But they know that they can make money with fan service. I think that's the biggest tragedy of the Solo film. Is that I really enjoyed that movie, but all the little fan servicey moments
yeah.
were terrible.
Yeah.
and
how he gets his name.
yeah, and like C-3PO and R2-D2 just
Yeah.
kind of standing around, and I just think the best parts of that movie were like the train sequence, anything with Woody Harrelson and what's her name, wonderful actor. She's off.
Daisy Riley.
No, not Daisy Riley.
I don't even know. I've lost where you're at.
she's
From Mission Impossible 2.
and
Rebecca Ferguson.
no, and she's in Westworld. British actress.
Thandie Newton.
Thandie Newton, yes, her and Woody Harrelson together. Those are the best parts of that film. So, yeah, but I agree with you. Just cast a different actor. We can do it. We can. Like I think about Once Upon a Time in America, and they have that sequence where there's the actors. How is this related to Tetris and Argo?
Well, it isn't. So I was trying to find a connection to bring us back.
I was like, oh, there's no actual different ages going on.
No.
What I will say though about what you're talking about, Sarah, is that Ben Affleck, if we think about his career with Matt Damon, and we know that they were childhood buddies and had business lunches about their acting careers when they were 15 and 17 or however old they are. He's, Matt Damon's, I think, had a far better career than Ben Affleck in terms of his acting roles. But Ben Affleck's, I think he just plays the cards that are dealt to him. I think he's usually quite open to being a bit scruffy, Gigi aside.
Oh, you mean looking wise?
Yeah, like he
totally.
throws himself into the role,
Yeah,
doesn't
and
he?
also, I think he has obviously made a conscious choice to become more of a director. And I really loved Gone Baby Gone,
Yeah, me
The
too.
Town.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I did
awesome
love
movies.
Argo, and I really respect Air. And there might have been one other, I can't remember. It doesn't matter because that's 4 out of 5.
Yeah.
I think he's done a blooming good job. Do you know this is the first? Air is the first time that he directed Matt Damon.
Right.
So isn't that neat? Because they performed together, obviously, in
Good Will Hunting.
In Good Will Hunting, and they wrote together in La Li La La. But this is the first time he directed Matt, and so there's really lovely clips and interviews of him saying, "Look, I knew he was an amazing actor, but my goodness." Working with him was astonishing, and he would bring this and da-di-da. And it's just the most adorable. I don't even want to call it a bromance. It's simply two childhood friends who just couldn't be better.
Have they ever written a film together again? Or have they either of them written a film?
I wonder whether...
I mean, Affleck wrote Argo.
Oh,
Yeah.
right.
I'm pretty sure he did, right?
Based
Yeah.
on Doodly Whatnot's story, Tony Mendes...
His memoirs, and then there was a Wired article as well. I think that's what kickstarted the whole project.
I don't know if Matt Damon is a writer.
Right. Well, they wrote it together, though, didn't they? They did.
Oh, wait, what I mean is I don't know that Matt Damon's written other screenplays.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
What a way to come onto the scene, you know? Like, I know they would have done small
Yeah.
roles and things, but to arrive as actors that have written a script and
Yep.
then, you know, what a film.
And win an Oscar. Boom.
Yeah, and that all those shots of them broing out with the
Yeah.
Oscars, such
Yeah.
a great image.
Yeah.
And then, you know, they did a movie with Robin Williams and Gus Van Sant, and I'm getting confused. Is
Millie Driver.
Is Anna Paquin in that, or am I
No,
getting... That's Forrest, Finding Forrest.
Mini Driver.
Mini Driver, yep, nice. Thank you for listening to another episode of Cinema in Context. If you enjoy our podcast, consider signing up to our Patreon. Cinema in Context patrons receive access to exclusive minisodes, opportunities for one-on-one discussions about the films you love, and our extended episode catalogue, including extended content of the episode you're listening to right now. We discussed third films that I keep wanting to say pair with, but third films that we would partner. No, that's a duo as well. Third movies. We talk about our favourite moments and things that we would change in either movie. Find out more at patreon.com/cinema in context. You can listen to Cinema in Context on SoundCloud, Spotify, Radio Public, Stitcher, Amazon Music, and Apple Podcasts. You can follow us on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, which are great places to let us know what you think of this episode, as well as give us suggestions for future films to discuss and compare. Look out for our next episode in a month's time, and until then, no hora mai!